Hey, so I literally just got back from my Part 107 recurrence test, and I don't know where my wallet is. Hold on a second, let me get my wallet. All right, so I had to get my wallet because I wanted to show you guys the licenses that are required for flying commercially legally in the United States. Now, obviously you need a driver's license to get anywhere because you're an American, you need a vehicle, by God. But you do need some licensing if you want to fly commercially as far as a drone is concerned. If you want to fly this and make money, regardless if it's this or a DJI Phantom or an Inspire 2 or even some kind of huge landscaping thing that goes and monitors crops, then yeah, you're going to need a commercial license, and that is the Part 107 commercial pilot's license for remote vehicles, or SUAS, small unmanned aerial systems and whatnot. So anyways, I'll talk about that towards the end of the video because I do want to talk about some other licenses that I have and memberships that you might be interested in, and I'll just kind of briefly go over some of that. So let's kind of put it in segments. So we're going to talk about hobbyists first, and then we'll talk about Part 107 and commercial use towards the end. So hobbyists, this is going to be generalized for both. You need to register with the FAA. So you go to the FAA's website and you type in what kind of drone you have, you give them all your personal information, they give you a serial number, and you put that serial number on your drone, and it's supposed to be on your drone at all time in a visible place in case you crash on Trump's lawn, and he comes outside and his hair flips in the wind and he thinks your drone's trying to kill him, and then they find your dogs and they put them on an operating table because it was linked back to you based on the serial number. Essentially, the government just wants to know how to link whatever happens, if there's something ever to happen, back to you so that they can torture your family. That is essentially what's happening, and that is not true at all. That is just, you know, they want something to hold people accountable if something bad does happen. Or, you know, maybe your drone flies into an alien spaceship, causes it to crash, the alien spaceship is completely rendered useless, and your drone is the only thing that survived, and you are crowned the hero of the world because you killed it with your UAS, your small UAS. So anyways, FAA registration, it is required for anything over 250 grams flying, whether that be a drone, whether that be a commercial like unmanned helicopter or something like that, whether that be a 3D plane, anything over 200 grams or 250 grams, you do need to register with the FAA. And that is something that is going to be, you know, your hobbyists are going to need to do that. People don't do it, but you're required to do it. And if you're flying under Part 107, you are definitely required to do it because they need to make sure that, hey, you have a Part 107 license, but you haven't registered any drones with us. So what does that mean? Are you not flying anything? You just wanted the license because you wanted it? No, so you definitely need to register with the FAA for flying anything over 250 grams. Now, the FAA isn't paying me. I haven't spoken with the FAA. This is just something I'm going over as far as licensing is concerned. So bear with me. The next thing is your AMA membership. Now, the FAA and the AMA are two different bodies. The FAA is actually a government-funded body, a federal aviation administration. Now, the AMA is the American Model Association, which actually isn't a governing body as far as laws are concerned. They can put in place like suggestions to do if you want to be a part of their members' society. Now, that's kind of what the AMA is. They offer like for the people that don't know, the AMA, again, American Model Association, the American Motorcycle Association, there's a lot of things that get confused. But basically the AMA, they give you a little bit of like, hey, you pay a membership yearly, a subscription, and you get like a magazine or something, you get access to our sanctioned fields, and you also get $1 million comprehensive coverage or something in case something happens with your airplane, usually airplane, and apparently drone, depending if you're flying in a certain area at a certain time of day. I don't exactly know about any claims that have been claimed with a AMA membership and a small UAS. So, you know, if you crash into somebody's car, are they going to cover that with AMA insurance? Probably not, so you probably need to get insurance. There are a couple insurance companies out there that I'll talk about later when we do commercial stuff. And sorry, the lighting just changed and my face is probably like but whatever, we're gonna continue to go. So that was the AMA membership. The only reason I personally have one is because there's an event every year called International Open that is actually at Muncie, Indiana, the AMA model, or the American Model Association's home base in Muncie, Indiana, and I go there and I need this card to be able to get on the premises and fly a drone. So I have that for one event and one event only. Anyways, we're going to talk about the next thing, which is a ham radio license. Now, the ham radio license is not something that you actually need or is required as far as flying generic FPV, because most FPV, when you're talking about a DJI Phantom, you're actually on an ISN band. And an ISN band is like 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, 5.8 gigahertz, something like that, where you're not actually, you're on a hopping frequency. If you're flying on anything that's an analog frequency, you pretty much need a ham radio license. Now, if you're flying with ISN bands like a DJI Phantom, you're completely good. You don't need a ham radio license. If you're flying Crossfire, you need a ham radio license to fly legally. If you're flying on 5.8 gigahertz at over whatever the allowed amount is, I'm pretty sure that you can get away with it up to 2 watts, which would encompass every single video transmitter that I'm aware of. But I don't know if that's true. I just remember that from when I took this test 4 years ago, that you weren't allowed to fly UHF, which is what Crossfire is, but you were allowed to do 5.8 gigahertz up to 2 watts. I'm not exactly sure if that's true, but we're gonna go ahead and say that that's not true, and you probably need a ham radio license if you're gonna fly legally as far as on an analog frequency or even a hopping frequency, where you are using like UHF bands or something like that, which is a lower band, 433 megahertz, 900 megahertz. So you would need a ham radio license for that. This is actually not a very easy thing to get. The test is pretty hard. The question bank is pretty large. It's probably on par with getting your Part 107. So just be aware, you can't just walk in there and take this test. You have to go to a testing center. You have to like sign up with a local ham license place, meet some ham people. They're all usually older and kind of quirky, so just be aware when you go to get your ham radio license, it might not just be like the walk in the park that you think it is, like taking some online test. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is insurance. We're going to talk about the Part 107, which is actually the commercial license that you need from the FAA to fly these things legally in the United States. So all of those other licenses and memberships and stuff that I talked about before, those are required for commercial operation as far as Part 107. I'm not 100% sure on the ham radio license, but you probably want to get it anyways. I don't think a lot of people do, and it's kind of overlooked because it's an FCC thing.
And the FCC isn't as like strict as the FAA when it comes to like individuals, unless you're literally going outside and taking an antenna with like 10 gigawatts and just blowing somebody's freaking radio signals out, then that's going to be a problem. But as far as like flying FPV, for the most part, I haven't seen it enforced, and maybe it will be in the future, and the FCC will be like, yo, you need a ham radio license to do anything FPV. Right now, it seems to be kind of lax.
But the FAA, on the other hand, had the 333 exemption 2 years ago, before 2016, where it was essentially like a full-scale pilot's license that you needed to have to fly a drone, which was completely bonkers, and nobody really did it. The people that did do it were just doing it because they were like, look at this! I got the money to do it, and I'm gonna make all the money. So that's kind of what happened with the 333 exemption. Then when the Part 107 came out, people were like, yo, okay, this is pretty reasonable. It's 150 bucks to take the test. You go take the test, and once you do that, then you register your drone and you're commercially ready to go. And at that point, all you're doing is going out and buying the equipment to then make money with whatever you're buying. If you're buying a mini quad, you're buying a DJI Phantom, all of that stuff is encompassed into that. It doesn't matter as long as it's under 55 pounds or over 250 grams. So with that being said, Part 107, it's something I've had since the day it came out, September 2016. And I just renewed it. A lot of those licenses are annual. I'll just go through here real quick. So with the license, as far as the FAA is concerned, when you're registering, you got 3 years on the FAA registration, so you got to renew it every 3 years. You need one registration per drone, apparently. With FPV stuff, seems to be you can get away with like having 2 and swapping them on and off drones depending on which one, because you are modifying them and doing all kinds of stuff all the time. That is not something that I'm condoning, but that's just what seems to be the regular thing that happens. When you're talking about FCC license, as far as a ham license, that's every 10 years, which is pretty dope because that was a hard test. When we're talking about AMA membership, you got to pay every year for that. That's kind of obnoxious. And then the last thing, driver's license, you know, you got 20 years for that thing. No, I don't even know, whatever. Driver's license, you're talking about FAA, or FAA Part 107, that is every 2 years. So we're actually right up on the 2-year thing. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I just got back. It's September 2018, 2 years exactly away from 2016, September. And yeah, I went and took the recurrence test, which is 40 questions, so you have an hour and a half to take it. The original test is 60 questions, so you have 2 hours to take it. They left off some of the stuff like the weather and the loading of the aircraft on the recurrence test, which is really cool because that stuff was, you know, pretty... It's not in depth, but it's definitely something that you're like, yeah, I don't know, this is a lot of information that I'm having to add on here. Also learning all the sectional chart stuff. So if you're unfamiliar with sectional charts, that's probably the one thing that you're gonna have to really crack down on when you go take your recurrence test, which it's on the original test, but the recurrence test is pretty much mainly sectional charts because they left out the weather and the radio frequency stuff. Well, radio frequency stuff's on there too, on the recurrence. Basically weather and loading are the only things they left out. So with that being said, you got to do this thing every 2 years. There are a lot of online curriculums, which I will talk about in a second. and I'll talk about how I prep for the test, because that's kind of cool, and I'll tell you where you can go, and I'll give you a discount code in case you want to get on these online curriculums and you want to, you know, learn some stuff that way, because I am a visual learner, and I will talk about that here in a little bit. But the last thing that we're talking about as far as commercial operation is concerned, because we have our Part 107 license now, and to go out, you pretty much want to have insurance. Now, I personally have insurance through the IDRA insurance, so Justin Haggerty. Anyways, IDRA, I'll link it in the description below. They have a pretty good rate as far as insurance. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was very cheap year, had like $1 million comprehensive insurance, and was completely commercial friendly. Like everything was good, seemed like a really good deal. Whatever, that's the insurance that I have. There are plenty of other insurances out there. There's a lot of things that have like X amount deductible, blah blah blah. For mini quads, the IDRA things seem to work really well. So I haven't had to claim so far, so you know, hopefully never I will have to make a claim. And then the other thing is we're going to talk about the online curriculums. So when I originally took the test, I used Remote Pilot 101, which wasn't bad. I got a 78 on my, or 72 on my first test. Again, not bad. It was just a lot of new information. Basically, online curriculums range between like $100 and about $300, depending on where you go and who you talk to. You can just get a pamphlet from the FAA that's going to give you all the stuff you need to study for your test. But personally, I have a problem with finding, going through textbooks and getting any kind of usable information as far as something that I'm going to retain. Usually, if I'm watching some kind of visual stimuli via a video or something like that, then I get a lot more out of it and I actually retain the information a lot longer. There is definitely something for me for visual learning, and I highly recommend these online curriculums. Now, there are a bunch out there. The one that I used on this last time, I got a 98 on my test. The one question I got wrong, I was like, you know, there were out of 3 answers, I knew it was one of 2. And it was a very trick question, which all the FAA's questions are very trick questions. There's a lot of them on there, so just be aware when you go take the test, if you're doing your Part 107, that there are going to be a lot of trick questions. They're just trickily worded. It's not necessarily that trick. It's just worded in a way that's like, I don't know if that's right.
Oh god, getting attacked by a yellow jacket. But
anyways, so online curriculums. Drone Pilot Ground School is the one that I used. I will link it in the description below. I can give you a $50 discount if you want. You can use Steele 50, S-T-E-E-L-E 50, and that's all caps, so with 50 at the end. If you put that in, you click the link in the bottom, go to the website, put that in, you get $50 off. And then you're able to go online. It's a lifetime subscription to their online curriculum. So every 2 years that you need to recur your Part 107, you just go on there. They got all the updated information, and it's actually a really cool program. I talked to the guy, Alan, on the phone. Perlman is his name, Alan Perlman. Really, really personable guy. I enjoyed his curriculum. It is a little bit more expensive than a lot of the ones out there. People are going to complain about the price. But again, I'm not telling you you have to do this one. I'm just kind of giving you generic whatever. If you want to do it, I found it to be great. I actually think it was better than the one I used originally, just the way that it's set up. But you know, it's all in who you talk to and how you do it. Someone could go out there and buy the book and be like, yo, I paid $3 for this book and I passed the test. Doesn't matter. If you get a 70 or above, you pass. If you get a 70 below, you don't pass. It's kind of like, you know, you get $150, you go take it. It's $150 to take it. So you want to get it right when you go take it. So just make sure that if you do an online curriculum, if you do it, then you pick a one that you know, has good reviews. And this one seemed to have really good reviews, and I highly recommend it. So again, Drone Pilot Ground School, guy named Alan Perlman. Check him out. Steele 50 is the discount code, and you can get $50 off. And again, I hope you enjoyed this information. I enjoy bringing you guys content like this. It's definitely not the typical content. I enjoy flying. I think you guys like watching me fly too, but I do this stuff all the time. I deal with like commercial stuff. I deal with business. I deal with all kinds of personal, you know, individualists with their hobby side of it, and I deal with people that are doing business side of drones, and I deal with people that are, you know, commercial real estate. I deal with big companies like GoPro and Red Bull and how they do commercial stuff with drone work. All this stuff. If you have any questions and you want to hear me talk about these instances, if you want to just hear stories about stuff like that, you know, I can do story times and like cool things where, you know, I'm talking about a specific instance and how I got that job, or, you know, who was involved and how that job went down, or, you know, who did what to get where, how they did it. I can talk about all of that stuff. If you guys are curious, just put it in the comments below. If you have any questions about my gear, or maybe IDRA and insurance, or freaking drone pilot ground school, all of that stuff, check it out in the description. I'll link all of it in the description below. And if you have any questions, again, put it in the comments. I do read them all, positive and negative. Please try to refrain from the negative comments. If you don't like the video, just click on to the next one. But I hope you guys learned something today, and if you didn't, maybe you'll learn something in the next one. But for those of you that did, thank you for watching. Have a good day. Bye.